The howling wind whipped across the frozen landscape, carrying ice crystals that stung like tiny needles against any exposed skin. Kira pulled her damaged thermal suit tighter around her body, knowing it was a futile gesture. The heating elements had failed hours ago, and the temperature was dropping rapidly as night approached on this desolate planet. "It's okay, Fluff," she whispered, pulling the small creature closer to her chest. "At least we have each other." The small blue-furred animal nuzzled against her, its three eyes blinking slowly as it shivered against her. Fluff was a hybrid creature, resembling something between a cat, puppy, and bear cub. The little being had been Kira's loyal companion throughout her explorations, and now it seemed they would meet their end together on this nameless frozen planet. Kira's orange skin, normally vibrant with golden speckles that glowed with health and vitality, had dulled to a pale amber. Her pointed ears, usually alert and upright, now drooped with exhaustion and cold. The Lyrian biologist had never expected to die this way. Her research vessel had malfunctioned during atmospheric entry, breaking apart and scattering across the icy plains. The emergency beacon was damaged beyond repair, and her communication devices were silent. The wreckage of her ship lay scattered across the barren landscape, twisted metal barely visible through the intensifying blizzard. She had managed to salvage a few supplies, but nothing that would save her from the killing cold of this place. Without shelter or heat, she estimated she had perhaps an hour before hypothermia claimed her. "We had good adventures, didn't we?" she murmured to Fluff, who responded with a soft trill. The creature's natural fur was thicker than her own skin, but even Fluff couldn't withstand these temperatures much longer. Kira felt tears forming in her eyes, instantly freezing against her cheeks. She brushed them away with a trembling hand, leaving tiny scratches from the ice crystals. As consciousness began to slip away, Kira's thoughts drifted to her family back on Lyria, with its gentle double suns and warm, mineral-rich oceans. They would never know what happened to her. She would simply become another explorer lost to the vastness of space. Her scientific findings, numerous specimens, and years of research, all lost. Fluff whimpered, sensing her distress, and licked her face with its small pink tongue. Kira smiled weakly. "You've always known when I needed comfort, haven't you? I'm sorry I couldn't get us home." The blizzard intensified, the wind screaming like a living thing around them. Kira's vision began to narrow, darkness creeping in from the edges. She pulled Fluff even closer, determined that her body heat, what little remained, would keep her pet alive as long as possible. "If there's anything after this life," she whispered, "I hope we find each other again." As consciousness slipped away, Kira became aware of a strange sound cutting through the howl of the wind. Mechanical, rhythmic, growing louder. With what strength remained, she raised her head slightly. A shadow moved through the whiteness, massive and imposing. At first, Kira thought she was hallucinating, her dying brain creating comforting illusions. But the shadow grew larger, more defined, until it resolved into a humanoid figure encased in heavy combat armor. The figure paused, then moved toward her with purposeful strides. Kira felt no fear. Death was already upon her, and this apparition, whether real or imagined, could do her no harm. She clutched Fluff protectively, even as her arms grew too weak to hold him properly. The armored figure knelt beside her. Through frost-coated lashes, Kira saw a helmet with a dark visor that reflected her own diminished form. A mechanical hiss sounded as the visor slid up, revealing a human face, male, with concern etched across features that seemed harsh and soft simultaneously. "Hold on," the stranger said, his voice partially distorted by the helmet's communication system. He glanced at the small creature in her arms. "Both of you." Those were the last words Kira heard before darkness claimed her completely. Warmth. That was the first sensation that returned to Kira's consciousness. Not the burning heat of pain, but gentle, encompassing warmth that seemed to seep into her very bones. She became aware of a soft surface beneath her and the weight of some covering over her body. Her eyelids fluttered open, revealing a metal ceiling illuminated by soft, ambient light. For a moment, disorientation gripped her. She had been in the snow, dying, holding Fluff. Fluff! Kira sat up abruptly, instantly regretting the sudden movement as dizziness swept over her. A small, excited trill sounded from beside her, and she felt a familiar weight pressing against her side. Relief flooded through her as Fluff climbed on her lap. The creature's blue fur clean and dry, all three eyes bright with recognition. "You're awake." "Good." The voice startled her. Kira looked up to see the human from the blizzard, now without his armored helmet. He was tall, with close-cropped dark hair and eyes the color of the mineral lakes on her home world. His expression was cautious, but not unfriendly. "Where?" Kira's voice cracked from dryness, and she cleared her throat. "Where are we?" The human approached slowly, as if trying not to frighten her, and offered a container of clear liquid. "Emergency shelter. My outpost is about 20 kilometers south, but the storm made it impossible to transport you there safely." He gestured to the water. "You should drink." Kira accepted the container, sniffing it instinctively before taking a small sip. It tasted clean, just water without additives. She drank deeply, the moisture soothing her parched throat. The shelter was small but organized, a single room with essential equipment, emergency supplies, and what appeared to be monitoring devices. Two heating units glowed orange in opposite corners, explaining the blessed warmth. "Thank you," Kira said finally, stroking Fluff's fur. "For saving us." The human nodded, sitting on a small stool across from the cot where she rested. "Jack," he said, pointing to himself. "My name." Kira understood the introduction and mimicked the gesture. "Kira," she responded, then gently touched Fluff's head. "Fluff." A small smile quirked the corner of Jack's mouth. "Fluff," he repeated. The little creature perked up at the sound of its name, tilting its head at Jack. Communication was difficult at first. Jack had no translator device calibrated for Lyrian language, and Kira's knowledge of human languages was limited to a few basic phrases she had learned during her xenobiology studies. They resorted to gestures, simple words, and drawings made with a stylus on a small datapad. Through this rudimentary communication, Kira learned that Jack was a scout for an Earth research team stationed on this planet, which humans call Frostpoint, to study its unique geothermal anomalies. He had been returning from a solo reconnaissance mission when his sensors detected her ship's crash site. "Protocol," Jack said, making a series of gestures that Kira interpreted as regulations or rules. "Watch only. No contact." He then pointed to himself and made a motion like breaking something. "But I couldn't just leave you to die." Kira nodded in understanding. It seemed Jack had violated his orders to save her. Among her people, such compassion was valued above rules, but she understood enough about humans to know their military structures often viewed things differently. As the hours passed, they developed a simple system of communication. Jack had rations suitable for her physiology, standard emergency supplies designed to be non-toxic to most known sentient species. Fluff, surprisingly, seemed to enjoy the protein cubes more than Kira did, and Jack appeared amused by the creature's enthusiasm. While Kira recovered her strength, Jack monitored the storm through the shelter's sensors. The blizzard showed no signs of abating. If anything, it was intensifying. The shelter, though sturdy, occasionally shuddered as particularly violent gusts slammed against it. "Bad," Jack said, pointing to the sensor readings. "Worse coming." Kira studied the data and nodded grimly. The shelter was designed for temporary use, not to withstand a major weather event like the one developing. She pointed to various parts of the shelter's structural diagram, identifying potential weak points. Jack looked surprised at her technical knowledge. "You understand these systems?" Kira nodded. "Similar technology. Different, but..." She made a gesture to indicate she grasped the basic principles. Working together, they reinforced critical junctions in the shelter, redistributed power to strengthen the thermal shields, and secured loose equipment. As they worked, Jack's initial wariness seemed to fade, replaced by respect for her competence. Fluff, meanwhile, appointed himself their supervisor, watching their work with all three eyes wide and occasionally offering encouraging trills. As they finished securing the last panel, a particularly violent gust shook the shelter. A hairline crack appeared in the eastern wall, and the temperature in the shelter immediately dropped several degrees. "Not good," Jack muttered. He checked his equipment readout and frowned. Too much strain. Structure integrity failing. Kira understood the gravity of the situation. The shelter wouldn't withstand the full force of the storm. They needed a more permanent solution. Jack seemed to reach the same conclusion. He activated a three-dimensional holographic map, showing their current location and what appeared to be a larger structure about 5 kilometers away. "Secondary base," he explained. "Stronger. Supplies." He pointed to the intensifying storm patterns. "Must go now." Before impossible. The prospect of venturing back into the lethal cold terrified Kira, but staying meant certain death as the shelter failed. She nodded resolutely, gathering Fluff and holding him close. Jack helped her into an emergency survival suit, too large for her slider frame, but better than her damaged one. He showed her how to activate its heating elements and sealed the helmet. For Fluff, he improvised a heated container that could be carried securely. "Stay close," Jack instructed, his voice now coming through a communication link in her helmet. "Follow exactly." He input a sequence into the shelter's control panel, likely a self-destruct protocol to prevent technology from falling into unauthorized hands, Kira realized. Then, with a final check of their equipment, Jack opened the door to the howling white void beyond. The journey to the secondary base was a nightmare of white blindness and shrieking wind. Jack attached a tether between them to prevent separation in the near-zero visibility. Kira focused solely on placing one foot in front of the other, clutching the container, holding Fluff with desperate strength. Twice they nearly lost their way, the navigation system struggling against the electromagnetic interference from a storm. Once, Jack physically lifted Kira when she stumbled into a snowdrift that reached her waist. After what seemed like eternity, a dark shape materialized from the whiteness, a low, dome-shaped structure partially buried in the ice. Jack input a code into a nearly invisible panel, and a door slid open, admitting them to a small airlock. As the outer door sealed behind them and warmth began to return to the chamber, Kira's legs finally gave out. She slumped against the wall, trembling with exhaustion. Jack quickly removed her helmet, his face tight with concern. "You made it," he said, relief evident in his voice. "Rest now. Safe here." The secondary base was considerably larger than the emergency shelter, with separate areas for living, storage, and research. Kira released Fluff from his container, and the small creature immediately set about exploring his new surroundings with cautious curiosity. Jack provided her with thermal clothing more suitable to her size, likely from the base's xenobiology research supplies, and prepared a meal from the station stores. As they ate, the storm raged outside, but the thick walls of the base muffled its fury to a distant rumble. With access to better technology, Jack was able to activate a basic translation protocol. It was far from perfect, frequently misinterpreting idioms and complex concepts, but it allowed for more meaningful communication. "Your ship," Jack said through the translator. "What happened?" Kira explained about her research mission, the malfunction during atmospheric entry, and her certainty that no distress signal had been successfully transmitted. "No one knows where I am," she concluded. "No rescue will come." Jack nodded thoughtfully. "My mission ends in 14 planetary cycles. When I return to the main base, I can help you contact your people." Kira felt a surge of hope at his words. "You would do that? Even though your protocols say otherwise?" Jack's expression was difficult to read. Protocols are important, but he glanced at Fluff, who had fallen asleep near one of the heating units. Some things matter more. As days passed in the confines of the base, Kira and Jack developed a routine. They maintained the facility, monitored the storm's progress, and took turns preparing meals from their combined supplies. The translation program improved as it analyzed their speech patterns, facilitating deeper conversations. Jack shared stories about Earth, describing its varied ecosystems and cultures. He spoke of great oceans and towering mountains, sprawling cities and remote wilderness. In turn, Kira told him about Lyria, with its floating archipelagos and bioluminescent forests. She learned that Jack was both soldier and scientist, part of an elite Earth Corps that combined military training with specialized scientific expertise. His specific focus was extreme environment adaptation, studying how different planets' conditions might be modified for potential human habitation. Not to colonize, he clarified, seeing her concerned expression. To understand. Knowledge first. Action maybe generations later. Kira appreciated his honesty. Her own people had a philosophy of minimal intervention in developing planetary systems, believing that observation and understanding should precede any interference. One evening, as they sat reviewing data collected from the storm, an alert sounded from the communication terminal. Jack tensed, immediately moving to answer it. The voice that came through the speaker was stern and authoritative, addressing Jack by his rank and surname. Kira couldn't understand all the words, but the tone was unmistakable. Someone was demanding answers. Jack responded briefly, his posture rigid. When the communication ended, he remained silent for several moments, staring at the terminal. "What's wrong?" Kira asked quietly. "Command detected your crash site," Jack said finally. "They want a full report." He hesitated. "I didn't tell them about you." "Why not?" Jack's expression was troubled. "Current protocol for encountering non-human sentient beings is complicated. You would be taken to the main base for assessment. It's not prisoner status, but not freedom either," Kira finished, understanding dawning. "I will be studied." Questioned. "Yes." Jack ran a hand through his hair, a gesture of frustration she had come to recognize. "Commander Harris is dedicated to protocol. He follows rules exactly, without exception. What will you do?" Jack looked at her directly. "I have 7 days before I must respond. We have time to think." That night, Kira lay awake long after Jack had fallen asleep in his separate quarters. Fluff curled against her side, sensitive to her distress. The creature nudged her gently, offering comfort in the only way it knew how. "What happens now, little one?" she whispered, stroking its soft fur. "Do we trust him?" Fluff blinked all 3 eyes in sequence, something he did when particularly content. The creature had accepted Jack without reservation from the beginning, and Fluff's instincts about people rarely proved wrong. The next several days brought a shift in their relationship. An unspoken tension hung in the air as the deadline for Jack's report approached. He spent more time at the communication terminal, searching through regulations and protocols, occasionally making notes that he wouldn't share. On the 6th day, Kira found him disassembling and modifying a small device that she recognized as a portable emergency beacon. "What are you doing?" she asked. Jack didn't look up from his work. "Making a choice," he said simply. That evening, he finally explained his plan. He had modified the beacon to transmit on frequencies used by non-Earth vessels, including those potentially recognizable to Lyrian ships. The signal wouldn't reach Lyria directly. The distance was too vast, but it might be detected by passing trade or exploration vessels. "It's a risk," he admitted. "If command detects the signal, they'll know I've violated protocols. But if we wait until I return to base, you'll be placed under protective custody immediately." Kira understood what he wasn't saying directly. Once she was in the system officially, Jack would lose any ability to help her. She would be at the mercy of Commander Harris and his strict adherence to protocol. "Why are you doing this?" she asked. "You're risking your position, your career." Jack was silent for a moment, his gaze moving from her to Fluff, who was attempting to catch dust motes in a light beam from a scanner. "When I found you in the snow," he said finally, "holding your pet, trying to keep it warm even as you were freezing, I saw something I recognized." He struggled to find the right words. "Compassion. Care for another being. That matters more than what planet you come from." The translator couldn't fully capture the emotion in his voice, but Kira understood nonetheless. Among her people, such sentiment would be honored and celebrated, the recognition of shared values across different forms of life. She reached out hesitantly and placed her hand on his, the first deliberate physical contact between them. Her orange skin with its golden speckles contrasted starkly against his paler tone. "Thank you," she said simply. Jack looked at their hands, then back at her face. Something shifted in his expression, recognition, perhaps, or decision. "We leave tomorrow," he said, "before the next scheduled communication check. There's an emergency vessel in the auxiliary bay." Kira's heart raced at his words. "Leave? To where?" "Away from here. There's a trading outpost at the edge of this system. Multi-species. You might find help there, or at least passage to somewhere that can contact your people." The implications of what he was suggesting were enormous. "You would desert your post? For strangers you just met?" Jack's smile was faint but genuine. "Not strangers anymore, I think." Fluff chose that moment to leap onto the table between them, chirping what sounded suspiciously like agreement. Despite the gravity of the situation, they both laughed, breaking the tension. That night, they prepared in silent efficiency. Jack gathered essential supplies, transferred critical data to portable devices, and disabled the base's tracking systems. Kira helped where she could, packing food compatible with their different physiologies and ensuring Fluff's carrier was secure and comfortable. As dawn approached, though on this planet, it merely meant a slight lessening of the darkness. An alert sounded from the communication system. Jack rushed to the terminal, his expression darkening as he read the message. "They're coming," he said, tersely. "Commander Harris is leading a team. They've detected unusual power signatures from base." He checked the time display. 6 hours, maybe less with their transport capabilities. The carefully constructed plan dissolved instantly. There was no time for final preparations or cautious departure. They needed to leave immediately. Jack moved with military precision, giving clear instructions as they grabbed the essentials and abandoned the rest. Within 20 minutes, they were sealed in their thermal gear and heading for the auxiliary bay through an access tunnel. The small vessel was designed for emergency evacuation, not comfortable travel. A sleek, utilitarian craft with minimal amenities but excellent speed and maneuverability. As Jack initiated the launch sequence, Kira secured Fluff in the designated safety compartment, the creature unusually subdued, sensing the urgency of their situation. "Strap in," Jack instructed, his voice tight. Departure might be rough. The bay doors opened to the still dark sky, snow swirling into the compartment. Jack navigated the craft out with expert precision, staying low to the planet's surface to minimize detection. They were barely 5 kilometers from the base when the craft's sensors detected approaching vehicles. Large, military-grade transports moving rapidly toward the facility they had just abandoned. "They're early," Jack muttered, increasing their speed. A communication alert flashed on the console. Jack hesitated, then activated it. "Lieutenant Carter." Commander Harris's voice filled the cabin, cold and precise. "You are operating an unauthorized vehicle and harboring a non-Earth entity in violation of Protocol 7A. Return to base immediately." Jack cut the communication without responding, his jaw set in a hard line. He altered their course, heading toward a massive ice formation that rose like a wall on the horizon. "The spine," he explained briefly. "Natural formation. Disrupts tracking systems. Might buy us time." As they approached the jagged ice cliffs, the vessel's sensors detected pursuit craft launching from the larger transports. Smaller and faster than the bulky transport vehicles, these pursuit crafts were designed specifically for capturing rogue vessels. "They're serious," Jack said, his voice grim. "Hold on." He plunged their craft into a narrow ravine within the ice formation, navigating by instinct and skill rather than relying on sensors that were increasingly unreliable in the dense, mineral-rich ice. The pursuing craft followed, but with less confidence, maintaining a greater distance. Kira watched in tense silence as Jack piloted them through the treacherous maze of ice. Fluff whimpered softly from his compartment, picking up on their stress. Suddenly, the ravine opened into a vast cavern of ice, a hollowed-out space large enough to contain a small city, with crystalline formations hanging from the ceiling and rising from the floor like alien architecture. Jack quickly maneuvered behind one of the larger formations, powering down all non-essential systems. They'll detect us if we try to leave the atmosphere while they're searching, he explained in a whisper, though there was no logical reason to lower his voice. We need to wait. For 3 tense hours, they remained hidden in the ice cavern, listening to the distant sounds of pursuit craft scanning the area. Eventually, the sounds faded as the search patterns moved elsewhere. Now, Jack said, bringing the systems back online. They'll expect us to keep hiding. Instead, we're going straight up. He launched the craft vertically with full power, accelerating at a rate that pressed Kira painfully against her seat. They burst from the ice cavern like a projectile, climbing rapidly through the atmosphere. The vessel's alarms blared as pursuit craft detected them and changed course to intercept, but Jack had calculated correctly. They had gained too much of a head start. Within minutes, they had left Frostpoint's atmosphere and were accelerating into open space. They'll follow, Jack said, plotting a complex course on the navigation system. But not where we're going. He directed their craft toward a dense asteroid field at the edge of the planetary system, a dangerous, chaotic region that larger military vessels typically avoided. Pursuit would require small craft like their own, piloted by individuals willing to take significant risks. As they approached the asteroid field, Jack turned to Kira. Your turn, he said unexpectedly. I can navigate most environments, but this... He gestured at the swirling chaos of rocks ahead of them. This requires different skills. Kira understood immediately. You want me to pilot? Jack nodded. I've seen how you analyze spatial relationships when we were repairing the shelter. Your brain works differently than mine. That's an advantage here. It was a profound gesture of trust. Kira moved to the pilot position as Jack shifted to the navigation station. She took a moment to familiarize herself with the controls. Not that different from her research vessel, with adaptations she could intuitively understand. Ready, she said, gripping the controls. Jack gave her a steady nod. I trust you. Kira took the craft into the asteroid field, her perception immediately expanding to track multiple moving objects simultaneously, a natural ability of Lyrians evolved from their planet's complex, three-dimensional ocean environments. Where a human might see chaos, she perceived patterns, rhythms, opportunities. The pursuing craft followed initially, but as Kira's piloting grew more daring, weaving through increasingly narrow gaps and executing maneuvers that seemed to defy physics, they began to fall back. One by one, the pursuit craft retreated to safer distances, unwilling to match the risk she was taking. Jack watched her with undisguised admiration. Remind me never to challenge you to a flying contest, he said, the tension in his voice giving way to something like awe. After nearly an hour of intricate navigation, Kira guided them through the densest part of the field. When they emerged on the other side, the sensors confirmed what they had hoped. No pursuit remained. Trajectory to the trading outpost? She asked, relinquishing the controls to Jack. He plotted the course, and the small vessel adjusted its direction. 8 hours at maximum sustainable speed, he reported. We should rest while we can. As the adrenaline of their escape faded, exhaustion crept in. Kira checked on Fluff, who had weathered the ordeal with surprising resilience and was now sleeping peacefully in his compartment. She settled into her seat, watching the stars streak by through the view screen. Jack, she said quietly, what happens when we reach the outpost? He was silent for a long moment. I don't know, he admitted finally. I can't go back to Earth forces now. Not after this. The weight of what he had sacrificed for her, his career, his home, his future, settled heavily on Kira's shoulders. I'm sorry, she whispered. Jack shook his head. Don't be. I made my choice. He met her gaze directly. And I would make it again. Something unspoken passed between them in that moment. An acknowledgement of feelings that had been growing since that first encounter in the blizzard. Different species, different worlds, yet somehow they had found connection in the most unlikely circumstances. They reached the trading outpost 8 hours later, a sprawling structure attached to a small moon at the system's edge. Unlike the sterile military facilities of Earth forces, The outpost was a chaotic blend of technologies and architectures from dozens of species, a neutral zone where commerce superseded political differences. Jack docked their vessel in an unobtrusive bay, paying the substantial fee with an anonymous credit chip. They entered the outpost wearing hooded cloaks that concealed their features, fluff tucked securely inside Kira's garment. The corridors teemed with beings of every description, some humanoid, others defying easy categorization. Languages and sounds overlapped in a cacophony that the translator struggled to process. Scents ranging from pleasant to revolting mingled in the recycled air. Jack led them to a quieter section where information terminals were available for public use. Kira accessed one, searching for any notices related to Lyrian vessels or representatives. To her astonishment, there was a message, a general alert to all outposts regarding a missing Lyrian researcher. "They're looking for me," she breathed, hardly daring to believe it. The message included contact protocols for any information regarding her whereabouts. "You should respond," Jack said, though she noted a flicker of something like regret cross his face. Kira sent a brief message following the encrypted protocols listed, confirming her identity and location. The response was almost immediate. A Lyrian vessel was already in a neighboring system and could reach the outpost within 2 planetary cycles. Relief and uncertainty warred within her. "They're coming," she told Jack. He nodded, his expression carefully neutral. "Good. You'll be safe." He hesitated. "We should find accommodation until they arrive. This outpost has facilities for most species." They secured a small suite using more of Jack's anonymous funds. 2 sleeping chambers connected to a common area, designed to accommodate various physiological needs. Fluff immediately claimed a soft cushion near a heating element, apparently deciding this was a vast improvement over their previous accommodations. As they settled in to wait, the reality of their imminent separation loomed larger. Jack grew quieter, spending hours studying data on the outpost, trading patterns, and transport options. Kira understood he was planning his own future, one that no longer included Earth forces or, after her departure, her companionship. On the eve of the Lyrian vessel's expected arrival, they sat together in the common area, sharing a meal of compatible foods acquired from the outpost's diverse culinary offerings. Fluff moved between them, accepting treats from both with enthusiastic appreciation. "What will you do?" Kira finally asked the question that had hovered unspoken between them. "After I'm gone?" Jack considered the question seriously. "There are opportunities for someone with my skills. Independent research stations, security for non-aligned colonies." He shrugged slightly. "I'll find a place." The thought of him wandering alone, cut off from his home because of his choice to save her, filled Kira with profound sadness. "You could come with me," she said suddenly. Jack looked up, surprise evident in his expression. "To Lyria? Why not? My people value science and exploration. Someone with your knowledge of Earth and other systems would be welcomed." She leaned forward earnestly. "It wouldn't be easy. You'd be the alien there, but you wouldn't be alone." The hope that flickered across his face was quickly tempered by caution. "Your people would accept a human? Just like that. They would accept the person who saved their daughter's life," Kira said softly. "The rest, we would figure out together." Before Jack could respond, the suite's communication system chimed. The message was brief and clear. The Lyrian vessel had arrived ahead of schedule and was requesting immediate boarding coordinates for Kira. The moment of decision had arrived sooner than expected. Jack helped Kira gather her few possessions and prepare Fluff for transport. They walked to the docking bay in silence, each lost in their own thoughts. The Lyrian ship was smaller than Earth military vessels, but more elegant, with flowing lines and natural curves that reflected the aesthetic values of Kira's people. As they approached, the entry portal illuminated, and 2 figures emerged. Kira's parents, their orange skin vivid against their flowing garments, golden speckles glowing with emotion. Kira ran forward with a cry of joy, embracing them both. Rapid exchanges in their native language followed, too quick and complex for the translator to process accurately. Fluff wiggled free from his carrier to join the reunion, receiving his own warm welcome. Jack stood back, watching the scene with a complex mixture of emotions. He had done the right thing. Kira was safe, reunited with her family, about to return to her home world where she belonged. Yet the sight of their embrace emphasized his own isolation, the bridges he had burned, the solitary future that awaited him. He was turning to leave when Kira's voice called out to him. She stood with her parents, beckoning him to join them. Hesitantly, he approached. "Mother, father," Kira said in carefully translated speech, "this is Jack. He saved my life and Fluff's when no one else could have. Without him, I would have died alone on that frozen world." Her parents regarded Jack with expressions that the translator couldn't fully interpret, but their body language, the slight forward inclination, the gentle gesture of their hands, suggested openness rather than hostility. Kira's father spoke, the translator rendering his formal speech pattern into simpler terms. "Our daughter tells us you abandoned your position, your people, to ensure her safety. Such sacrifice cannot be overlooked or undervalued." "It was the right thing to do," Jack said simply. Kira's mother stepped forward, studying him with eyes that seemed to see beyond his physical appearance. "And now? What path lies before you?" Jack glanced at Kira, then back to her parents. "I haven't decided yet. There are options, but—" He trailed off, unwilling to admit the emptiness he felt at the prospect of continuing alone. A silent communication seemed to pass between Kira's parents, subtle changes in their expressions and the patterns of golden speckles on their skin. Finally, her father spoke again. "Among our people, one who saves a life becomes connected to that life, a bond as meaningful as family. Would you consider accompanying us to Lyria? Not as a guest or visitor, but as one who belongs." The offer, so similar to what Kira had suggested earlier, but now formalized by her family, left Jack momentarily speechless. He looked at Kira, who was watching him with barely concealed hope. "It would not be simple," her mother cautioned. "You would be the first human to live among us. There would be adjustments, challenges, misunderstandings. But there would also be purpose, community, belonging." Jack thought of Earth, of the military structure that had been his home for so long, the rules that had guided him, the missions that had defined him. He thought of Commander Harris and the pursuit that would likely continue if he remained in known space. Then he looked at Kira, at Fluff curled contentedly in her arms, at her parents standing together with genuine openness in their posture. Here was something he had never expected to find so far from home: acceptance, connection, possibility. "Yes," he said finally, "I would be honored." The boarding of the Lyrian vessel was conducted with efficiency tempered by warmth. Jack was provided with quarters adapted to human physiological needs, technology to help him learn the Lyrian language properly, and cultural orientation materials. As the ship prepared to depart, Jack stood with Kira in the observation dome, watching the trading outpost recede. Fluff perched on a cushioned shelf beside them, all three eyes blinking contentedly. "Scared?" Kira asked softly. Jack considered the question honestly. "Yes," he admitted, "but not enough to regret my decision." She smiled, the golden speckles on her skin glowing more brightly, an expression of happiness, he had learned. "Good. Fear is natural when beginning something new. It means you understand the importance of what's happening." As the outpost diminished to a distant point of light and the ship aligned for its journey to Lyria, Jack felt a profound sense of rightness. He had followed his conscience instead of his orders, chosen compassion over protocol, and somehow, against all odds, found new direction. Kira's hand found his, her fingers intertwining with his own in a gesture that transcended their physical differences. Fluff trilled approvingly. Together, they gazed ahead as the stars streaked past, each light representing possibilities in a universe vast enough to accommodate all forms of connection, even those as unlikely as theirs. The Lyrian ship accelerated into the darkness, carrying them toward a future neither could have imagined when they first met in that frozen wasteland. A future built on the simple truth that recognizing the value of another life, regardless of its form, was perhaps the most profound connection possible between sentient beings. And somewhere behind them, on a small, frozen planet, the storm continued its endless dance across the ice, unaware and uncaring that its fierce embrace had ultimately led not to death, but to an unexpected beginning.